Fantasy football is about choices. Will it be James's expertise
He's going to be the only guy on the field to get the ball. He's a 3-down workhorse to get the ball.
or Chris's insights?
But even if they trade him, I still don't think they're going to become a run-first team.
The choice is in your hands. We give you the option.
What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all having a great week so far. For today's episode, we are talking about sophomore players. But what really is a sophomore player? Well, a sophomore player is basically a player heading into their second season of the NFL. It's technically just like a school sophomore student going into their second year of school. So, without wasting any time, let's head right into our first player, where we're going to be talking about one of the biggest wide receivers last season that was a rookie. We're going to be talking about Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings. Guys, do we think Justin Jefferson can repeat his huge rookie season, or was it just a one-off? What do you guys think, Chris?
I mean, good explanation there, Nick, with a sophomore. It was pretty good. I like how you brought it into the whole school thing. But as for Justin Jefferson, ultimately, yes, he will be a solid wide receiver for the 2021 fantasy season. But he was one of the guys we picked who we didn't think would live up to his ADP right now, which is 24 overall, puts him about the wide receiver 8 mark. Which to me, wide receiver 8 is ultimately going to be his ceiling. You'd be drafting him at his best possible finish. So just to play a bit of devil's advocate here with Justin Jefferson, I do believe that Jefferson is going to be a more than viable fantasy option this season. But let's take a dive into his rookie 2020 campaign. Nick, can you pull up Jefferson's stats from the last season, please?
Yeah, honestly, I was really surprised at how well Jefferson did last year being on such a run-first team. But last year, Jefferson actually had 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, and averaged 15.91 yards per catch.
Yeah, all great stats, but 125 targets with 88 receptions. Not only was he the first ever rookie wide receiver to put up those numbers on that few of targets, he was the first wide receiver to do that in the NFL to put up 1,400 yards on 125 targets. So the only argument I would have as to why Justin Jefferson is not going to live up to his ADP is that the Vikings defense has improved through the offseason. Therefore, most of his stats, if you break down his stats on a quarterly basis, the fourth quarter, he had the most receptions with 28. And the third quarter, he had the most yards in his season with 539. He is seldomly used early on in the game, posting only 175 yards in the first quarter. So, James, do you own a lot of Justin Jefferson?
I think I have him in one league. I used him last year for a trade to score me DK Metcalf, actually. But I have him in one or two leagues. I agree with what you're saying there, Chris. I mean, I really didn't have any comments to go against you. He's definitely, I don't see him being the same as he was. I think there is going to be a little bit of regression on my part. I'm just looking at what he has there. You got Dalvin Cook, who could be a problem because Dalvin Cook's going to run. You got also that guy, what's the number 2 wide receiver? Adam Thielen, or was number 1. We're not sure if he's the number 2 yet. I know that it looked like Jefferson was taking over, but has Jefferson fully taken over? Is it still going to be a 1A, 1B situation? And actually, if you look at what Adam Thielen did last year, and Nick, I know you're an Adam Thielen fan. I'm pretty sure you got a team named after Adam Thielen. So I'll ask you, how did Adam Thielen do last year?
Well, like you said, I mean, he's my guy. I've had him for so many years in fantasy, and he doesn't disappoint me. I mean, last year he actually had 74 receptions, 925 yards, and 14 touchdowns. And as long as he keeps putting up numbers like that, my team name is still going to be Hooked on a Thielen.
See, I mean, aside from having a horrible team name, yes, he was
That's not
fantastic.
true.
uh, you know me, I don't like player names in my team names, but that's okay. That's another
Uh,
subject, another topic. But 14 touchdowns is nothing to be shy about. I mean, he was obviously the red zone target. And if Justin Jefferson is becoming that number one guy over Thielen, which I mean, Thielen is getting older, so he probably will be and is going to start shifting. I think what's going to happen is the defenses are now going to set up the coverage for Jefferson a little bit more. They'll put their better corners, better players on Jefferson, which could lead to Adam Thielen having a little bit better of a year than we expect him to have in this sort of offense. I mean, he's still going to get his numbers. I still could see him as a top 10 wide receiver. But that number 8 that we see as the ceiling, like you said, Chris, I think that's a little too high for him. I think he's going to be lower. I'm projecting him somewhere between 10 and 11 by the time all is said and done.
Hot take. Hot take, James. 10 and 11.
It's not that hot, but sure, 10 and 11.
I was being sarcastic. I don't know if you caught that, but
No, I don't see sarcasm.
I know.
all right. Well, that's good. I mean, interesting to see what actually Justin Jefferson will do in his sophomore year. I'm hoping Adam Thielen does better. But let's go to our next one. Our next guy that we're going to be talking about is a sophomore debate between two running backs, actually, and two running backs that have a lot of fantasy owners real excited going into 2021. We're talking about Indianapolis Colts Jonathan Taylor and Washington football team's Antonio Gibson. Now, the only other person real excited about Antonio Gibson is Chris, of course, but we'll keep that till the post. Guys, what do you think? Who will be the better running back this season between these two running backs? What do you guys think, James?
All right. So first off, like you just said, Nick, I have to give props to Chris. Last season, he called Mr. Gibson. Okay. Yeah, clip it. You can clip it. I'll say it. There's nothing I can do about it.
It's going to be my ringtone every time you call me now.
He told me about this guy named Gibson for I can't remember at the beginning, and I'm looking at him like, are you crazy? And Chris was drafting him anywhere from round 6 all the way to the waiver wires in week 1, and he's telling me this is the guy. I didn't believe him, and he ended up being the guy. So Chris, kudos to you. I should have listened to you there. And I didn't. Now let's also go into the question that Nick said to me. Who would I take? My guy's Jonathan Taylor. I had him last year. I drafted him in a few leagues. I couldn't wait for this guy to go off. Marlon Mack gets hurt, and I was so excited. And then it kind of flopped because they didn't know how to use him in Indy. But by end of season, they started using him like a real running back, and he led me to a few championships on a few different teams. He was amazing last year. There's a reason why he was drafted so high coming out of college, a lot higher than Antonio Gibson. Now, Antonio Gibson was good, so don't get me wrong.
Put a lot of stock into the draft stock, eh?
I'm not saying that he wasn't.
Hey,
put a draft stock is something there.
Analysis is the draft stock.
Now, I got Nick to create a comparison chart between these two players. So, Nick, can you give us the comparison chart about their rookie seasons?
A quick. Just is this chart going to give me 17 game season? Because the 17th game is not really relevant for fantasy.
Last season, it's all their stats from last season. So whatever games they played, sir.
But it's going to give me the 236 I see here on this chart. That's including.
Let him tell you the chart before you talk.
That's including week 17, right?
Talk to the chart.
Kind of moot. Your chart's kind of irrelevant.
Talk to the chart. No, it's not relevant. You just don't like the numbers.
Because week 17 doesn't matter, and you added it here, so it doesn't matter.
And there are some leagues that use week 17 as
and those leagues aren't real fantasy leagues.
I'm not saying anything. That's what they do.
If you use week 17, then you shouldn't be playing in that league because
I don't play any of those leagues, but they do use them.
I think you should take off 3 of those TDs and about 232 of those yards that he got in week 17.
You're just mad that the numbers don't go your way. Nick, can you tell us the numbers?
I just wanted the relevancy.
So then be quiet and let Nick say the numbers.
Nick,
go ahead, Nick.
Bless us with these
false
numbers.
I can finally say my chart. I worked hard on this chart, guys. Come on. All right. So between Taylor and Gibson, the amount of games played, Taylor had 15 games.
14.
Gibson only had 14.
13.
Can you let him talk and be quiet? Can you mute him?
Jeez. All right. rushing yards last season. Jonathan Taylor had 1,169 compared to Gibson's 795.
That's also
rushing
false.
TDs, 11 touchdowns with 11 touchdowns. So they were both tied. They also
False.
tied in receptions at 36. Then their receiving yards. Jonathan Taylor had 299 versus Antonio Gibson's 247. And Jonathan Taylor had 1 receiving touchdown versus Antonio Gibson's no receiving touchdowns. This gave them a total of 236.8 fantasy points for Jonathan Taylor to Antonio Gibson's 169. 88, sorry.
So if you take out the Week 17 game, Jonathan Taylor actually has 9 rushing TDs and 916 yards.
Let's now.
And
I'm
Gibson's
talking. You
numbers
get your
don't really
point later.
change.
Listen. I'm talking. You can have
I
your
just
points
wanted,
later.
I
Okay?
just want the
So,
proper information.
as
That's all.
we
Don't
can
be
see-
boosting your numbers.
As we can see, Jonathan Taylor was the better running back last year. Jonathan Taylor will be the better running back this year. He has the better offensive line. He has the better team. Their team are looking to be contenders. They are probably going to be winning games more so than not. So they're going to be able to run the ball.
Won the division last year, but all right.
It was a shitty division, and the Cowboys were missing their quarterback. That ain't going to happen this year. Nonetheless, I think that Jonathan Taylor will be the guy. I've shown that. Chris, go ahead. Tell us why Gibson's going to be over.
All great numbers, but your chart kind of gets thrown off balance when you added those Week 17 numbers because Jonathan Taylor did go off for 230-something yards, and I think 2 or 3 TDs that week. So your numbers are a bit off.
My numbers were last season's totals. It doesn't matter when they were. They were the totals.
We're not an NFL.
The
we're a fantasy podcast.
The
at the end of the day,
totals
so
were the totals for last year.
To
That's
make
what
your
I had
guy
to go
look
with.
better, and that's at the end of the day that was it. But for the 2021 fantasy year, although I agree, both will be assets heading into the season. Antonio Gibson, Ant Gibbs, the Ant-Man, the wide receiver, as James likes to call him, another one of his bad calls in 2020.
No, he's still a wide receiver.
Will end up being the better fantasy option for the year. You're going to get him at a better rate than Taylor, who is currently going in the mid to late first round. You're not going to have to worry about a Marlon Mack or a Nyheim Hines. James, I know you're a Taylor Swift lover or Jonathan Taylor lover, but how much do you really trust JT this season? I know you only really trust him because you
100%.
Gibson
100%.
has no true threat behind him. Yes, J.D. McKissick, or as James would say, DJ McKissick, was a thing
DJ's
last
a master.
season.
He's good.
He ate up a lot of those passing targets, but Gibson has elite speed as well, ranking in the 99th percentile in speed in the whole NFL, and he showed it off in big games when he broke loose. He busted out for scores.
Didn't they bring in a rookie? Didn't they bring in a rookie running back who rushed for I think it was 800 yards in one game?
And where was he drafted? Since you put so much stock into draft stock,
he wasn't drafted. He wasn't drafted.
So then your point, your counterpoint, again, you're contradicting yourself because your main argument is draft stock. And you're coming
that's not my main argument. That's not my main argument. It's always
your main argument. It's always draft stock.
In this argument, I'm not using that as my main argument. I'm saying that they have a guy who put up, I think, how many TDs did he have in that one game?
You're talking about Jared Patterson. And what division in football did Jared Patterson play in, James? What team
again, I'm just looking at the numbers. What did he do?
You contradict yourself so much, but I love it. It helps me a lot. The Washington coaching staff has already come out to say that Gibson is going to get increased role in the passing game, which to me, James, as you love to bring up so much last season, how much Gibson is a wide receiver, that is music to my ears.
He's going to catch the ball more, sure.
I just want to bring up some stats. One game in particular last year, the Thanksgiving game against your Dallas Cowboys, where you got to see the showcase of Antonio Gibson.
Do we have to? Nick, you don't have those stats. You lost those, right?
Cowboy fans, can you please bring up those numbers for me, Nick, please?
Nick, you lost those, right? You don't have them.
I'm going to deny your request for this.
Perfect. I like it. Yes.
Collusion.
I'm not doing it.
Those stats don't exist. No one knows what they are. Don't worry about it.
Collusion.
All right, fine. If you really want that.
Yes, that's your job.
It pains me to say this. It really does, but Gibson had 20 rushes, and he had 115 yards and 3 touchdowns during that game. I can't believe I watched it. It was terrible.
The galloping gobbler.
Yeah, no.
hurts.
So when given more of a workload this season, expect Gibson to break out in 2021, ultimately finishing better than Jonathan Taylor. James, do you
Not
want to
gonna
make a
happen.
bet? You want to make a bet? We got a bet?
You want to bet?
What are we betting?
Well,
Saints jersey versus Cowboys jersey?
You really want me to rock a Saints jersey if I lose? I mean,
Hey,
I'll make
man.
it look better than you wear it, but
I think
I
your
don't
wife
know.
will like it a lot better.
Ooh, I don't know about that one.
Oh, jeez. Shots are being
That-
fired this week.
I mean,
Wow.
I could use a rag to wash the car with if you want to give me one of
That's
your
what you
Saints
can
jerseys.
use your other jerseys for.
No. Those jerseys are in pristine condition.
Hey, you can use it as a rag as long as you're
All
washing
right.
my car. That's
So
fine.
loser has to wear the other team's jersey for an episode. Sound good?
Sounds good.
You guys mark it down?
This is it. This is going on the record.
Higher finish,
loser.
right? Higher finish.
Yes, higher finish, higher fantasy. What half
Got it.
point, full point, standard?
We'll do half point. We'll do the
point?
common half point.
All right, Nick, you mark that down and make
Already
sure
got
that
it.
Chris gets the Cowboy jersey when he's ready.
Yup, there we go. So the higher finisher and a half point PPR fantasy, whoever finishes higher, the loser has to wear the other team's favorite jersey. So Chris would have to wear a Cowboys jersey during an episode. James would have to wear a Saints jersey.
I can't wait to see all three of us in a Cowboys jersey. It's gonna be fantastic.
It's gonna be great. Yeah, that's light it up. Let's do it.
I like the confidence.
All right. Let's go on to our third topic of the day. We're moving to the quarterback position. We have another battle right now. It is between two of the highest rookies last year, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Unfortunately, Joe Burrow went down with an injury, so Justin Herbert had the better year. But gentlemen, what do we think? Who will have the better season this year, Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow? What do you guys think?
I mean, this right here is probably one of the hottest topics coming to sophomore fantasy quarterbacks. Joe Burrow was so big last year. Herbert was a back of the draft pick, sometimes early second. Would have loved to see Burrow finish healthy last season and watch what he might have been able to produce as a rookie. He had some great games in 2020. He averaged 270 yards a game. In 5 of those 9 games Burrow played, he threw for 300 or more yards in those weeks. In week 7 versus the Browns, last year, Joe Burrow put up 400 yards and 3 TDs. So the talent is there. The capabilities are there. The only question is the O-line there. We've seen the devastating injury like Nick brought up due to that faulty O-line. The Bengals surprisingly beefed up their defense in the offseason, but they did sign Riley Reef to protect his right side. I would have liked to see them draft Penei Sewell over Jamar Chase. I think the Jamar Chase draft pick was a luxury pick that they didn't really have the luxury to make. But Burrow last season averaged 18.6 fantasy points per game. He had 4 finishes as QB1, 4 finishes as QB2. Now that they added LSU teammate wide receiver Jamar Chase, along with T. Higgins in his second year and Tyler Boyd, Joe Burrow has all the opportunity to produce as a top 10 fantasy quarterback coming into
as long as
the
he stays
season.
on his feet, right?
Well, that's any NFL player, man. You can't use that. You can use that argument for anyone.
I'm just saying. I mean, that offensive line didn't get much better.
I can say that about Justin Jefferson or anybody. I can say that about Herbert, right? I mean, one bad play and
I'm
it's
just
over.
saying. You had the option to help that line, and you decided the wide receiver.
Oh, I agree.
So
I didn't like their draft, but I'm not a GM, so at the end of the day, maybe they made the right choice and it's better. And
What do you mean?
yes.
You're an armchair GM. I've seen you GM all your teams. What are you talking
Exactly. I should put a resume out there, eh?
Yeah, let them
Just-
know you run.
just hand in
35
all my
teams.
transactions.
Yeah. Just see. Don't do that. If you hand in your transactions, they'll never hire you. I've
They'll
seen
never
those.
hire me.
I've been on the other end. They're fantastic for some
geez.
people, but not always.
So again, when you're picking Joe Burrow, you're playing with house money. When you draft Burrow at his ADP right now, which is around QB 13, whereas Herbert is QB 7. So again, it's one of those situations where you're drafting Herbert at his ceiling, and you can get Burrow at a greater value later in the draft, where he has all the opportunity to finish as a top 10 QB when the fantasy season is said and done, not including week 17. or 18 this year.
Well, 17 has to be included. 18 maybe not.
This year, yeah.
Chris, those are great points. It was tough having this conversation, thinking of these of which side to really go with here was a tough call for me as well. I had stock in Burrow last year, and I didn't have much in Herbert. I think you were the one that was really high on Herbert in a few of our leagues, coming out saying how good he could be, and what he did was amazing. We're saying both these guys are going to be good. So whoever you get in this one, wherever you get them, they're going to be good this season as long as they stay healthy. But in my eyes, though, I think Herbert is only going to get better than he was. I think last year he had a very good season with the players that he did. He's going to have another year with all of that same offense that's there. Their offensive line has gotten a lot better, which is going to keep him up. And just more time to gel with those receivers is fantastic. Looking back at his stats last year, Nick, what can you show me some of the things that he had last year?
Yeah, I mean, considering this guy almost didn't get to play unless, a doctor punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung, pretty amazing season for what we got to see from him. So his stats, he ended up finishing with 4,556 yards, 31 touchdowns in the air, and 10 interceptions. He also rushed for 234 yards and had 5 rushing TDs.
Huge.
So this gave him a total of 344 fantasy points on the year. Just a monster year for Justin Herbert.
Amazing. He was, considering the guy was not even supposed to play last season, he put up this. So Nick, with those numbers there, that put him at quarterback what?
9.
And how many games did he play?
He played 15 games.
Because he missed the first one. So had he played the extra game, the 16th, not the 17th, and he would have had another, how many points per game was that?
Probably about 22 points-ish.
Okay, so if you add the 22 points that he was averaging in the other games, that actually bumps him up from QB9 to QB7. So, I mean, and that's where Chris already said he's probably being drafted at right now is QB7. I think this guy can actually be higher than that QB7. And the reason why I think he could go a little bit higher, I still think he's going to do exactly what he did last year, but I think he can actually go a little bit higher because they brought in a better offensive line. They added to that, making him be able to stand up more. He won't be tackled as much, hopefully, or sacked. They also brought in a new offensive play caller by the name of Joe Lombardi. He's a Sean Payton disciple. Chris, you know a little bit about Joe Lombardi, don't you?
I do. So I agree with you most part there. I think the only thing that's going to inhibit Herbert finishing anything higher than his draft stock right now, which you say QB7, is his rushing. If you're looking at any of the quarterbacks within the top 5, they have a supreme rushing ability. So taking that out of Herbert's game, I don't think he's going to finish much higher than a QB7.
Fair enough. So looking at what he did last year, some of the things that he can improve on, which is why I think he could be a little bit better. He had a 5.2 passing touchdown rate, which ranked 14th. So that could improve. He had an 18% bad throw rate, which ranked 12th. That also can improve. And as you said, his rushing, he only averaged about 3.7 rush attempts per game. If they can boost that up a little bit, I mean, as you said, he's probably not the best rusher, but if they can give him a few more rushes per game, that could also increase a little bit as well. At the end of the day, I still see him in the top 10. Could he be top 5? I mean, depending on how this team does throughout the season, it might be. But the one thing that I will say with Chris is you're getting Burrow at a cheaper rate, and he could be higher than you would be getting Herbert at the rate that you're getting for the possibility of him being higher. So I will give Chris that part, that I think he's correct on that one. So, but I still, if I have a chance, I'm taking Herbert over Burrow.
Really, though? Even though at his ADP you're taking Herbert over Burrow?
It depends on the
I
draft.
would rather have a more solid. I'd rather have a more solid position player over than drafting a QB.
It would all depend on where he falls in the draft to me. Basically, I mean, it also depends on the league we're running. Is it a 1 QB? Is it a 2 QB? Is it a super flex? I mean, there's all different ideas of where, when. But if I'm having to choose right now without knowing where I'm drafting him and what the ADP is, I'm still taking Herbert over Burrow right now.
Gotcha.
All right. Just sticking on this little this or that right now. Are you guys taking Herbert or Burrow over Tua right now?
Herbert.
Yes, Herbert and Burrow over
Actually,
Tua,
yeah,
right?
Herbert and Burrow, yes.
Okay. And then what about against Hurts right now? Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
I'm still taking both, yeah.
I'm a Hurts denier, so.
And I'm a Tua denier, so that works perfectly.
There you
Oh,
go.
perfect. Yeah, great. All right. Sounds like perfect.
I'm not a fan of Hurts either, so don't get that's another
Well,
one.
you're
I'm
a
not
Cowboys
too,
fan, so
Yeah,
This
there's
is
a
true.
little bit of a
fans
bias. You don't like
yeah.
Jones. You don't like Ertz. You probably hate Fitzpatrick now that he's.
You know what
he's
sucks is I really
Can't
liked
hate
Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick.
I mean, he's an awesome player, an awesome person, but now I'm gonna have to hate him. So yeah, that's he's on that list.
typical.
All right, gentlemen, let's get into our last topic of the day. We are talking about a position that we normally don't talk too much about.
Sophomore
but it's still-
kickers.
No.
Punters,
Oh,
punters,
man.
punters, punters. No?
Yeah.
Oh,
Coaches.
this is still a very important position in fantasy that a lot of teams need. We're
Cheerleaders.
talking about the tight end position. Okay, tight ends. Jeez.
Oh,
You
those
are terrible
guys.
guessers. Terrible. All right. Are there any viable sophomore tight ends in the league in 2021? I mean, some names that we got here, Adam Troutman, Cole Kmet, Harrison Bryant, Albert. Oh, because I'm not pronouncing that last name.
Come on.
Aguna
So, some guys like that. Are any of these guys viable in this season for fantasy? What do you guys say?
There's definitely some interesting names heading into this season, but for me, I'm gonna take my boy Adam Troutman as my sophomore fantasy
Homer.
tight end option for 2021. About time I pick a home guy. Jeez. With Jared Cook leaving to the Chargers in free agency and the Saints not adding anyone else through free agency, maybe with the possibility of Taysom Hill starting as tight end one, I'm expecting big things for Troutman this season with more volume coming Troutman's way. In the small sample size we got to see him last year, he put up a 93.8% catch rate with 0 drops, which is pretty impressive for a rookie. Now, it was only on 16 targets, but with those 16 targets,
That's it.
I said small sample size.
You did. I was actually going to ask you how many targets was that. I was curious.
Well,
but-
with the 16 targets, he did go off for 171 yards and a touchdown. Given his size, 6'5", 255 pounds, Troutman still possesses great top-end speed. He's great accelerating through his breaks, and he also does a great job making catches through contact. With Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara being the only 2 true pass-catching targets in New Orleans right now, Troutman could emerge as the number 3 target in his sophomore year.
Don't they
Nick.
have Traquan Smith there too?
Yeah, but it's who's going to be the third? Is it a given that Smith is going to be the third? That's the question.
No,
right?
I just thought of that in my head. I forgot if he was even there or not. So
Yeah, they got Traquan, they got Kawan Taylor, they got Deontay, they got a couple other guys, but no one has
real
emerged
threats.
as that. Yeah, no one has emerged as that true number 3 target. Nick, can you give me? I don't have it in front of me. Can you give me Trout's ADP right now, or Troutman's ADP right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, he has been on my list, and now I got to move him up because of you. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, I've had trouble trading for a lot of the. I had to make every time these episodes come out, I have to make trades before the episodes.
Yeah, exactly. You're giving away all the.
Otherwise, I'm either buying high or selling low, or it's great.
yeah.
All
So
right.
tell
Well-
everybody that. So now when they listen to this, now they're really not going to trade with you.
I got so much grief when I traded Davis and then sold him down the hill. The last episode there. Oh man.
Anyways, Troutman is actually going either undrafted or really, really late. He has an overall ADP of 201, and his tight end position ranking is 22nd right now.
So that's great. That's making him a true value target heading into the season as the Saints' number 1 tight end currently on their depth chart. So if you're going to pick him up off waivers, I mean, he's. I don't know if you can really buy him low right now in dynasty leagues, as any owner with common sense kind of reads the situation. But if you're in a redraft and you want to pick other players and kind of you miss out on those high valued tight ends early in the draft, Troutman can definitely be a guy that you consider.
Well, I agree with you, Chris. I think out of all of the sophomore tight ends that are out there, he is the number 1 guy to go for. And he's in that target range that I like for tight ends because I hate the tight end position, and I'll leave it straight to the end as possible and hope that I catch 1 or 2 sort of guys that no one else knows about or is not thinking about. And he's one of the guys on my list. So I hope he doesn't go too much higher because I do want to take him in the drafts as we go. But if I had to choose someone else other than that, since all those points are pretty much what I would have said, a guy that I'm thinking about that might be okay. He's not going to start okay because there is someone else in his spot, but I like Cole Kmet from the Bears. Like what he did last season, I know it wasn't a big sample size. I think Troutman had a better sample size because it was higher, but Cole Kmet is 6'6", 262 pounds. And, he's a beast. I mean, he's got Jimmy Graham in front of him right now, which sucks. But I don't know how much longer that is. The only thing that scares me is the fact that they had the option to cut Jimmy Graham and his $10 million, and they decided to cut Kyle Fuller instead of Jimmy Graham. So they kept Jimmy Graham for a reason. I'm not sure what the reason is. But again, they also signed Andy Dalton. Still don't know what that reason was. So there's a lot of things that I'm not sure about what's going on in Chicago. But I think that
Chicago knows what's going on in Chicago.
I don't know what they're doing. But I think Cole Kmet could be a guy, maybe not at the beginning of the year, but later on during the season. If you're in Dynasty and you get a chance to get this guy, hold him. He's going to be something there, especially when Justin Fields finally gets on there to play, whether it's week 1 or half of week 1, like Chris has suggested, or a little bit later. We'll see. But I think he could be someone that by end of season, I might be a tight end that's viable, that you're like, wow, I'm glad I took this guy. So keep an eye on him. Keep him on your watch list. Don't draft him. Unless Jimmy Graham gets cut, I wouldn't draft him in any redraft or keeper leagues yet. And in Dynasty, I would take a chance on him later. But I think he could be someone that could turn into a good pick for later on in the season if he gets the chance. What do you think of Cole Kmet there, Chris?
I mean, I like him coming into the season. Like you said, I like him in Dynasty formats. I'm going to watch the situation in Chicago, whether they release Jimmy Graham prior to when the season starts. So
they still can do that. I'm hearing that they won't, but we'll see.
Yep. They probably run a lot of 2 tight end sets. So he's definitely a guy I'm keeping my eye on. That's for sure. But we got another bet between Troutman and Kmet, or what?
Are you crazy? No.
Feeling lucky?
No.
The guy that doesn't like tight ends, you think you're going to bet on that? Come on. What do you think this is?
I don't even think I do a best ball bet for this one. So I just wanted to throw a little bit of a different person in there because we both agreed on Troutman there being the best sophomore tight end. So
we didn't both agree. You agreed with me.
So we both agreed. That's only because it let you talk first.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your tight end views. I'm really excited to see where these sophomores end up as, these young kids take over the NFL and basically become the next thing big in the NFL. So that is our show for the night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out our other episodes and other videos on YouTube. And don't forget to check into our next episode as we drop every Tuesday and Thursday, anywhere you stream your podcast, as well as on YouTube, like I said. Be sure to follow us on our social medias for even more content to help you win your fantasy football seasons. You can find us on Instagram at The Option Podcast, on Twitter at The Option Pod, and on TikTok at The Option Fantasy Football. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Don't play in leagues that go to week 18.
Do you agree with us? Disagree with us? Let us know with a comment below, or even reach out to us and DM us.